Hi, crew. Okay, so this is what we call a Vox Prof. I just want to give you a few basic announcements and talk about some of the things that have been happening in the past week or so in terms of current events. And obviously, coronavirus is kind of front and center on absolutely everybody's radar. But there have been some interesting things going on around it that I think are relevant to human rights. So, for starters, a few course announcements. If you've looked at the Canvas page today, you'll note that I've listed my Zoom office hours there, which unsurprisingly are exactly the same as my regular office hours were previously in the semester. But if you want to come and hang out with me on Zoom, ask me questions, talk about whatever you want. I'm holding Zoom office hours on a regular basis every Tuesday and Thursday, and if it seems to you that I've said the word Zoom about 6 times, it's because I find it fun. So feel free to come join me. If you are not available on a Tuesday or Thursday, 9:30 to 10:30, then email me and we'll set up a one-on-one time to talk. Okay, second thing, the module that you're looking at for Tuesday, for today, for Tuesday, is healthcare as a human right. In this module, you're going to be looking at 2 PowerPoints and watching a video, Sick Around the World. You're also reading the NESRI report, which you can locate on the Canvas in the required readings file on Medicare for All. And I'd like you to respond to any and all of this in the Vox Student Discussion Forum. Late submission policy. I wanted to let you know that all late penalties are in abeyance. So if you're turning something in and you're concerned that you're not going to be able to get it in before deadline, do not stress over that. Obviously, I don't want you to just slack off and do everything at the end of the semester. But if you're close to the deadline, you do not need to contact me and ask for permission, or you certainly don't need to apologize. Just get things in when you can. Don't let deadlines be an additional stressor in an already stressful situation. Speaking of that, since I'm now thinking about your papers, the paper deadline, as you know, is now April 9th. If you want to talk with me one-on-one about that, you can email me. You can call me at the cell number 716-445-9216, but I would much prefer that you contact me during office hours or set up a time to meet on Zoom so we can do this face-to-face. Okay, and finally, the next exam, which I said was exam 3, and it's not, it's only exam 2. Sorry about that. The take-home exam-only format is going to give you 24 hours to take the exam. So I'm going to expect you to be pretty familiar with the material. But again, this does not have to be a do or die, end of the world thing. I'm going to give you an exam review guide later this week, just like last time. And it will have a number of essay questions that may be on the final exam. So think it through ahead of time. Okay, so just a few current events. I've been thinking, obviously, about how we uphold human rights in a pandemic. And it's complicated. Pretty much every social institution is being affected right now by what's going on with this virus. Our economy is being affected, obviously healthcare, the way that we interact with each other, the 6 feet apart thing is creating a lot of social isolation. It's having an impact on virtually everything we've talked about this semester so far. Migration and freedom to move around, freedom to apply for asylum. Our borders have been closed. That's no longer an issue, or no longer allowed. The impact on education is obvious. You're experiencing it right now. But I wanted to talk about a couple of specific things that touch on other subjects we've already addressed this semester and revisit them in light of the coronavirus. Here's the first one. Remember this guy? This is Jair Bolsonaro. He is the president of Brazil, sometimes known as Trump of the tropics, who came to power in 2016 in very, very similar ways to Donald Trump by using his ability to create a populist argument in favor of his election, largely on social media. He has a long and disturbing history of being extremely authoritarian. Right now, though, he's getting a lot of pushback from the public. Bolsonaro out is in Portuguese, it's Fora Bolsonaro. And that's showing up a lot in social media, in protests. It's trending on Twitter. It's being forecast or broadcast onto the side of buildings. Hashtag Bolsonaro out or hashtag Fora Bolsonaro is all over the place. And it's because he has been ignoring and downplaying the coronavirus. For weeks and weeks, he insisted that it was not actually a problem, that it was more important to pay attention to the economy, and he's getting significant resistance from his public now. So as one of those people who is kind of at the forefront of the movement toward autocracy and away from democracy worldwide, this is one of the tiny little silver linings associated with this pandemic, is that it's causing people to rethink some of their political choices. The other thing I wanted to note is a controversy that came up earlier this, well, let's see, what is this, Tuesday? Came up last week. Donald Trump keeps referring to the coronavirus as the Chinese virus. Now, on the face of it, that's no big deal and maybe even reasonable to say, because we know that the virus began in China. That's where the first cases broke out. That's where the first wave of the pandemic started. However, there's significant concern about this. And we know that the president is aware of the potential implications because he's been called on it over and over and over, and he keeps insisting on using that phrase. In fact, the picture you're looking at down in the bottom right corner here shows his notes from a briefing that he did a few days ago. And I guess it's kind of hard to see, but the word that's crossed out and written over with Sharpie was supposed to be coronavirus, and he wrote over it Chinese to remind himself. So this is not, just accidental. This is something he's doing very, very deliberately. Here's why it's a problem. Framing the issue this way and insinuating repeatedly, as he has done, that China is somehow to blame rather than just the first victim for the pandemic is contributing to anti-Asian and specifically anti-Chinese racism, discrimination, hostility, hate speech, and increasingly violence. There have been a number of incidents of people who have been cursed at, spat on, kicked, assaulted, yelled at, and accused of causing the virus and being responsible for the whole problem. And it does seem to be escalating. There's a term for this. When a public figure uses mass communication against a particular individual or group, and in so doing incites or inspires acts of terrorism that are statistically probable but happen seemingly at random. We call that stochastic terrorism. What that means, something being statistically probable but happening seemingly at random, is that the person in question says these things knowing that there's no way to predict who's going to react to it, who's going to be triggered by it, who's going to hear the accusations and the hate speech and say, you know what, I'm going to do something about this, and go out and start shooting people up or physically attacking them. You have absolutely no way of knowing who's going to do that. But you know that statistically, if you keep using this inciting language, somebody's going to do it. It's statistically probable that violence will result. So you're effectively engaging in a terrorist act where you never lay hands on the victim. You just inspire somebody else to do so. There is a pushback against this now. There is a movement to encourage people to think about the relationships that they're forming in their heads between being Chinese and the virus that is disrupting all of our lives and potentially killing a great many people. Fighting back against racism, fighting back against discrimination, fighting back against the potential violence associated with stochastic terrorism is a significant part of what the human rights community is all about. So be aware of this. Pay attention in the news to when terms like this are used. Chinese virus, China virus, the Kung flu, that's another one that's going around. Be aware of it. Push back.